Hello and welcome back to 1874. It's time for a transfer talk. I'm live. It's Monday. It's 3:30 p.m. and I'm here to chat through all things Aston Villa and transfers and anything else that people may ask in the YouTube live chat this fine Monday afternoon. This show is sponsored by Luke Roper, and if you want to get 20% off everything that Luke Roper have to offer, then use the code TVV20 and you'll get your 20% off. I can hear a funny noise, which I'm not very happy about, but I think it actually might be coming from outside. Just wait for a few people to come through on the chat now and see what people are asking. The main thing I want to focus on today, and in fact, I'll just start with that now, is the way the kind of striker market is working and moving at the moment, and how I think that's probably beneficial to Villa at the moment, and how I think Villa may have made some decisions behind the scenes that may not have been made had they qualified for the Champions League. Now, it's becoming quite apparent and quite clear that Arsenal looking at Benjamin Sesko from Leipzig. He's their primary transfer target. Obviously, they tried or were linked, probably somewhere in between, actually. There was involvement with Arsenal and Watkins in January, and he ended up staying. Obviously, it was John Duran that ended up leaving. Then Manchester United looking at Victor Gyökeres. I wish I could say his name properly. There we go. Victor Gyökeres looks like Manchester United is going to be his destination. Champions League football doesn't seem to be something he's bothered about. So Manchester United is looking like Gyökeres is his primary destination should Manchester United make an offer that gets accepted. Chelsea have signed Liam Delap, so he's there on a 6-year contract. So that's them sorted for a striker as well. So where does this leave Ollie Watkins now? I believe, and this is my own opinion, this isn't massively based on anything. If I'm being honest, I haven't done the rounds this week. It's only Monday. Haven't spoken to loads of people. So what I'm about to say is based on my own opinion rather than anything that I may know. So had Villa qualified for the Champions League, I think we all know they would have been probably making a move for Marcus Rashford. Monchi spoke last week or the week before about how, as the window goes on, they haven't given up that Marcus Rashford will be coming in. But at the moment, I would say with Villa's squad cost rules, it's not looking great. Villa's wages to turnover is 93%, I think. So, as the window goes on, maybe Rashford becomes a possibility again if he hasn't got a move. But as it stands at the moment, I don't think Villa will be going in for Marcus Rashford. That would have left Ollie Watkins vulnerable, I think. But what this has done, and Villa qualifying for the Europa League probably plays a part in this as well, is that I think this just secures that Ollie Watkins will be Villa's main centre forward next season. And I'm really, really happy about that. Everyone knows how highly I rate Ollie Watkins and what I think of him in terms of the strikers in Europe. I still don't think Villa can go and get a better striker than Ollie Watkins. Did the show with Stato yesterday. You took looking at his goal contributions again, absolutely massive. Yes, he's missed some big chances, but he gets himself in those positions. He gets himself into positions that not many centre forwards can get themselves into. For me, Ollie Watkins is the best striker that Aston Villa can have, and he'll be the beneficiary of being the main man again next season, knowing he's the main man, and he'll have a season that's a bit more aching to the season when Villa finished in the top four and got to the semi-finals of the Conference League. That's my opinion. So the way the striker market's working at the moment and what we're seeing other teams do, I think all this is doing is just confirming that Ollie Watkins is going to be Aston Villa's main centre forward next season, and I'm all for that. That's what I want to see. I think had we qualified for the Champions League, some stuff might have gone on. Maybe the landscape would be looking slightly differently now. And Tielemans has come out with some quotes in the last 24 hours that people are concerned by them, but for me, it's just part and parcel of football. I think it's where Villa are at the moment. Tielemans' quotes don't worry me because I think we all know that until June the 30th, so 21 days, I think it is now, until then, pretty much anyone could go. Anyone could be for sale, and probably Watkins is included in that. If someone came in with an offer for him and Villa hadn't shifted anyone before June the 30th, then obviously he could go. There'll be a lot going on behind the scenes that we don't know about at the moment. It feels very, very quiet. I said that last week as well, that it was extremely, extremely quiet. But I think there'll be tons going on behind the scenes. People will be beavering away and working away. We're just not seeing the fruits of that labour at the moment. Plans will be being made, and we're not party to what's going on. We don't know what's going on, but stuff is undoubtedly happening. Villa don't know themselves at this point who's going to go. I don't think obviously they'll know Leon Bailey's going, but I think Villa won't even be clear about which player it is that's going to be the sale that helps with the squad cost rules. And I turned to Jonathan Ross there with the squad cost rules and the PSR rules. Villa don't know at the moment who's going to go. So technically, every player has a price. I've said it previously. If we get to the end of June and someone comes in with 100 million for Morgan Rogers, Villa would Villa would be forced to look at that. They may look at it anyway. I mean, it's 100 million, but the Tillerman's quotes about, being happy at Villa, which he is, really, really enjoying it there, but kind of at the end, not ruling out a move. The players will be wise to what's happening at the moment. They'll know the situation the club are in. So they'll know that, the possibility is that if Saudi come in for Tillemans and it's something he's interested in, 60 million, again, the club might look at it if it's getting towards the end of June and we haven't done anything. We've all got our favourites. We've all got players that we hope stay. We've all got players that we would hate to see be sold, and there's a lot of them, to be honest. And I feel like that as well. There's a ton of players that I wouldn't want to leave, but undoubtedly, at least one of those players that we all like is going to go. It's just a case of who. So let's see what happens. But I feel like the way, and this is me just gauging the striker market at the moment, the way it's moving, the way it's looking, the business that's already being done, everything is pointing towards Ollie Watkins being the main Aston Villa striker again next season. And that's something I'm really, really happy about. So, yeah, let's move on from that topic and have a look what people have been asking. We've got plenty of people in the chat. Hello, gaming and stuff. Hello, Nashville and 13. Nashville and 13 says, give us some good news, Dan. I've not really got any, in all honesty. Not really got any good news. I've forgotten that I'm not around tonight and that I was supposed to be going to Lionel Richie with my wife. So I'm trying to shift some tickets that aren't shifting. So that's bad news as well. If anyone wants to buy any Lionel Richie tickets off me, please let me know. I've knocked the price down considerably and still not managing to shift them. So on this stream now, if anyone wants to buy Lionel Richie tickets, you know where I am. Ping me a message. Who else have we got? Mr. Green says our day is saved. I'm not sure it is. I'm not sure I'm going to be providing anything of any real substance, which isn't great when you're coming on to do a show. But I wanted to do a show today, but it does feel very quiet on a Villa basis. There's lots of transfers happening. There's lots of stuff going on in the football world. Obviously, the Club World Cup's coming up, and the window's got another 24 hours or so left on it. I think it shuts again on the 10th for a week or so. I could be wrong there. I mean, nothing really stops anyone doing business because even if the window's shut, you can still kind of line up signing a player. But I think it might be a busy 24 hours for the teams that are involved in that competition. Look at Man City. It looks like they're going to sign Cherki, who was absolutely sensational for France last week. Scored a lovely goal. They're doing some really good business. I think if you're looking around the Premier League, it probably feels like a lot of teams are doing business and Villa aren't, and that may worry some. It's not a worry to me. Villa have got to concentrate until June the 30th of shifting rather than buying, unfortunately. If anyone subscribed to The Athletic and read the PSR article last week, we're the only team that seem to be affected by it, and it's damaging. I spoke about the PSR rules earlier on in the week on social media and said the sustainability side of PSR seems to be all about sustaining the current big six to where the Premier League want them to be in that top six. It's not geared to help Villa. It's not geared to help Newcastle. I'm sure in the future it won't be geared to help Forest, who have ambitions. It's really, really tough. Champions League football would have made a little bit of a difference, but I still believe that we'd have been a little bit in the mire with this situation. Even if we'd have got Champions League football, we've got to do something because of the UEFA squad cost rules and because of PSR. Now, I think Bailey will solve PSR. It's the squad cost rules that are the massive issue here. Villa have got to do something about that wage bill. And of course, the only way they can do that is by moving on one of the higher earners, which we spoke before, Jacob and myself, about Martinez kills two birds with one stone almost. He's still the one, if I had to put money on it, that I think will be the player to go, the big player to go that we wouldn't want to lose. But as I've said, pretty much anything is on the table at the moment. Struggling to move the chat down. Here we go on my mouse. Hello, David Styles. Hello, Rachel Insall Lewis, regulars on the channel. Simon Cohen asked about Tillemans. I've just covered that. Harry Alexander, love the ambition here, says, Dan, you should try and get David Ornstein on for one of these transfer talks. I'm sure Jacob's got the connections. I've actually got the connections myself because people may forget that I worked for The Athletic for a long, long time, doing Villa shows and presenting general shows for them as well before we went our separate ways, and did loads of shows with David Ornstein and spoke to him many times. Easily the most professional person I've ever worked with in my life, and a really, really impressive operator. Everyone knows that he is the guy when it comes to genuine transfer news, bona fide transfer news. I could ping him a DM. Shall I ping him a DM? I imagine he costs. The budget on 1874 isn't huge. But I'll ping him a message, Harry Alexander, if that's what you want. I'll ping David Ornstein a message and see what he says. But I will not hold my hopes up of being able to get it done. But I'm sure I'll get a reply from him. So leave that with me. I will see what I can do. Jim One Villa says PSR is concerning. As I've said, it is, but I think the UEFA squad cost rules, from speaking to a lot of people in and around football and in and around Villa, that's the biggest worry here. And I wish it was different. It feels so unfair. We've said before how unfair it feels towards our club. I've just said how unfair it is. They're the rules that we're operating in, and unfortunately we have to abide by them. If we don't, we're going to be in trouble this time next year, because it won't just be a fine from UEFA. It'll be possibly a removal from European competition, or a really, really heavy punishment. So Villa have got to do something. They're going to do something. We'll know more across the next 21 days. Tom Harding says, is it a concern that Emery dropped Watkins twice last season? Does that indicate he isn't exactly what Emery wants? And if Rashford joins, would that push Watkins out, as it would mean he wouldn't start? I don't see a world in which Villa have two premium players as a centre forward. Again, from speaking to people, Villa feel now that they're not in the position to be able to carry two kind of top players in each position. Now, obviously, the players that play off the striker, it's quite fluid because they can all play in multiple roles. So you can probably kind of discount that area. But left back, for example, Villa feel they can't carry Luka Dean and Ian Maatsen, who will both be on similar-ish wages. It has to be one or the other, and obviously Maatsen's the younger profile. He's the more recent signing. If Villa could shift Dean because he's on fairly hefty wages, they would. That's how Villa feel at the moment. So you look at right back, Cash, and then a younger player in Garcia. The way things are at the moment, the way the rules are, that's the way Villa are feeling, that they're going to have to go in a few positions now. Like if a centre back comes in, a right centre back, obviously left centre back is sorted, it'll be a younger player than Concert. It won't be someone who's established like Dizazi already. It's going to be a younger, up-and-coming player. It could even be Bogard, depending on how pre-season goes. But that's very much how the club are feeling at the moment, that they're not in a position to carry two premium players in each position. So centre-forward fits into that. So as long as Watkins is at the club, I don't think Villa will be signing that big centre-forward to kind of accompany him, which, again, it prevents us from building. It prevents us from doing what we want to do, but it's where we are. And would it be slightly different if we're in the Champions League? It would be mere speculation from me. It would be better, but I think the situation we're in now until the end of June would be the same. We might be able to do a little bit more post-June, but at the moment, we'd still be in the same situation of having to shift a player that we don't want to, even if we'd have finished top five, which is where we wanted to finish. Louth Proud says, hi Dan, I wouldn't mind a different variation of a striker potentially to come in and complement Watkins, or a different option off the bench. I think what you want in an ideal world, and Rashford was this player to an extent, is a player that can play in one position. Like Rashford, for example, was brought in because Villa thought that they'd play him on the left wing, and things changed as time progressed because it was having too much of an impact on the system. You want someone that can play up top if Watkins isn't playing or isn't there, but can also play with him, but play in one of the other three positions of the striker. Now, that's a really, really hard thing to do. I'm sure Villa, I don't know how they're going to do it this summer. I think, again, it's going to be probably a young up-and-coming centre-forward. It's not going to be Redmond. Redmond won't be part of the first team, but if they do get a centre-forward in, it's going to be a young up-and-comer, someone who I says isn't the finished article, much like I just spoke about right centre-back. It's going to be a younger variation of player to back Watkins up, a little bit like when we first signed Duran. But in an ideal world, I think this is the same for all clubs. We've seen how difficult it was for Spurs over the years to have backup for Harry Kane. They really, really struggled with that, to have a player of real quality and substance. So they kind of went the multifunctional route with Richarlison at one point. They thought, well, he can play with Kane and he can play up top as well if Harry Kane's not there. Ideally, that's the route that Villa are going to have to go down here. But I think it'll be a young striker. I think that's what they'll be looking at. I'm not sure they're going to be able to find that multifunctional player that most clubs dream of. David Starr says, we've already got one of the best strikers in Europe. Don't need another striker at that level. Attacking forward, that's another question. Yep, definitely would agree with that. I'd agree with that from David Stars. Thank you for always supporting the channel, David. Really, really appreciate the fact that you always seem to be on these streams live and you always seem to enjoy the content. Hello to Kari as well, who says, Dan the man. We do have a little bit of disagreement over Ollie Watkins, but again, appreciate you watching the channel every single day. You watch it every single week. You get involved in the comments and in the chat as well, and I do genuinely, really appreciate that. Chris Franklin, this is an interesting question. Says, does the fact that clubs know we need to sell mean clubs will wait until the end of June to try and pick us off? I've done shows where I've said that's something that I'm really, really concerned about. I think if you're a smart club, that's exactly what you'll do. If you're interested in a player for Villa, you will wait until the last second. And I know how much work Vidagani and Monchi had to do at the end of June to try and push that Douglas Luiz deal through. And we probably didn't get what he was worth. And it ended up being one of those strange PSR deals with players moving in both directions. But if you're a savvy club, you will get to that last week of June when you kind of get the feeling that it might be panic stations at Villa. Now, I don't think it will be because I think we're too smart. We've got too many good operators at the club now. Maybe in years gone by, that might have been the case. But if you rewind a year and look back to Newcastle in that last week when they hadn't shifted the player that they needed to shift, nothing was off the table. They were touting Isak round. They were touting Anthony Gordon round. In the end, they had to do some clever manoeuvring, and Minter ended up going to Brighton. I don't think they actually really wanted to lose him, to be honest, but they had to sell someone. But because they hadn't done what they needed to do in the last week of June, and this is my concern, that not through any fault of their own, I think Villa will get to the last week of June and not needed to have done what they need to do as well. That a smart club will come and try and pick a big player off Villa for maybe a slightly less fee than they're worth, or they'll go and pick up someone who you perhaps in any other scenario would have been untouchable, like a Tillemans, like a Rodgers. That's something that really, really concerns me. Kamara would probably fall into that bracket as well. That's something that really, really concerns me and is something that really worries me as we're kind of coming towards the middle of June now and no one's being sold. I didn't think that they would be. I worried that this might happen. I still think it will happen. But I just feel we'll go into that last week of June and it will feel like nothing's off the table. Now, Villa will be speaking to other clubs. Other clubs will be speaking to Villa and inquiring about players. Of course, agents will be doing their bit as well and speaking on behalf of their clients to other clubs. It's not supposed to happen, but undoubtedly it does. Undoubtedly it will. Villa will have been part of that themselves as well in bygone transfers. It's just the way football works. So you can't complain about it because we do it as well. But I do feel like by the time we get to the end of June that we're going to be vulnerable, and that really, really does worry me. What else have we got in the chat here? Again, if I could get my mouse to work, it would be absolutely fantastic. Chris Franklin again. My fear is we end up selling Martinez later than we'd like, and all the decent goalkeepers are gone. Garcia and Chevalier both linked elsewhere. Two young up-and-coming goalkeepers. We know there's going to be movement in the goalkeeper market this season. Villa aren't going to be the only team that are interested in those two players. Jacob pretty much confirmed last week that they're the two goalkeepers that Villa have on their list. But it is what it is. You can't go and buy a goalkeeper. Villa can't do that now because Emi Martinez is still there. And as much as I keep saying I think he's the favourite to go and he's the one I think will go, people have change of hearts. I'm repeating myself from previous streams, but Grealish was as good as gone in that first summer when we stayed up in the Premier League. It was happening. He was on his way. We stayed up. He's had a chat with Dean Smith. He had such a good relationship with Dean Smith, and he ended up staying. Martinez could have a change of heart, and it could be him. He could just refuse to go. Players can refuse to go, or the options might not be there for him that he wants. I know this Manchester United link won't go away, but from what I've heard, it's not the English clubs that we need to worry about at the moment. It's I say at the moment. A couple of weeks ago, that was the case anyway, where it was abroad that would be his most likely destination, Emi Martinez. But there's every chance he could end up staying. But at the moment, I do still think he's the favourite to be the one that moves. What else have we got in here? Kari says, don't bother Ornstein until Villa have made a few moves. Then ask, but Kari, you want to know what's happening before. You don't want to speak to him when it happens. You want to speak to them before and get ahead of the curve and know what's happening. I will chuck David a message, but I think he's got bigger priorities than coming on my little Aston Villa channel. I'm going to be honest around that. So many people asking questions here and contributing to the chat. Garnacho for John Ferrugia. Sorry if I've said your name wrong. Not one for me. Not one that I see happening at all. Garnacho. I don't think that's going to be something that happens. He'll want big wages. He'll be on fairly big wages at Manchester United as is. I still think Napoli's probably his most likely destination. Left winger Garnacho doesn't strike me. Although I think Villa might sign someone for the left hand side, I don't see it being a winger, and that's what Garnacho is. And I don't see him playing on the right hand side for Villa either. So they'd want too much money as well. Villa aren't. I don't think Villa are operating in that kind of market for 50, 60 million pound players this summer. I really don't. So don't see anything happening with Garnacho at all. Still making my way down the chat. AK says, do I think that Marlon will have I don't think you've actually asked me a question there, AK, have you? You've just said, I think Marlon will have a big part to play next season. I bloody hope so. I really, really like the look of Marlon. I'm a big fan of him, a big fan of what he did in his short space of time at Villa with very little opportunity and very little minutes. He made an impact in every single game that he was involved in. Marlon's going to be a good player for Villa next season. I've just got a feeling he's going to be a real fan's favourite. Him, Matson and Onana, if he stays, which I think he will, they're going to be big players for Villa next season. You're going to see the best of them in their second season, and I'm all here for it. And I'm really, really looking forward to it. Nashville says, do you think things are slow because Villa are waiting on the Premier League verdict on selling assets? If we sell the women team, does that fix all our issues? I don't know enough about that. If I'm to be perfectly honest, I could sit here and pretend and say that it solves all our problems. I look at it and what it prospectively is and think, well, it can't do any harm, can it? But I don't know the ins and outs of how that works and whether it helps with squad cost rules or PSR. I would assume it doesn't help with squad cost rules. Although I suppose it's to turnover, isn't it? So maybe it does. I don't know. I'll try and find out. Maybe I'll get someone on who knows a little bit more about it than me. But you'd assume it probably helps. It must be able to help in some way. But I don't even know at the moment if Villa are planning on doing anything like that. I've seen a few stories, a few murmurs knocking around, but I haven't heard anything about it myself or spoke to anyone about it. So, yeah, I don't know. Is the quite a simple answer there. I could pretend. Maybe other people would pretend, but I'm not going to. AVFC Stato, great time for AVFC Stato to turn up on the chat, because that means that I can plug the show that Stato and I brought out yesterday on the channel. If you haven't watched or listened to that, do go and watch or listen to it, because Stato has dug out the most interesting stats from Villa's 24-25 season. And what we've done is we've discussed those interesting stats, and there's some absolute humdingers in there as well. So kind of the stats that defined Villa's season and why the season ended up the way it did. Do go back and watch and listen to that show and all the other content as well, including my interview with Matt Law from the Daily Telegraph on Friday that we did as well around Jack Grealish potentially coming back to Aston Villa Football Club. I've seen a lot of stuff on forums around me and Jack Grealish and the shows that I've done around it that I found very, very amusing in the last 48 hours or so. I think that probably just about does us. Rachel Insel Lewis has thoughts on JJ to Newcastle with Barnes coming the other way. Rumours surfacing again. I've not seen that resurface. Obviously, I saw the initial ones. I think it might have been the Daily Mail that did that. I've not seen anything around that, if I'm being perfectly honest. And my understanding is that other clubs aren't struggling with PSR, so there won't be as many of those type of deals that get done this transfer window. But I've been wrong before. But I don't think that's the kind of deal that we're going to see. Gaming and stuff's asking about the kind of selling assets to herself. Again, apologize. I don't know much about it, or as much as I should about it, and I don't want to lie. So, yeah, I'll try and get someone on who does know what they're talking about with that kind of thing. Right, that does us. I'm going to go. Buy my Lionel Richie tickets, please, because I'd really like to not lose the £200 that I've spent on Lionel Richie tickets. So they've been sold for virtually half price at this point on AXS. So if you want to buy my Lionel Richie tickets, go and buy them, or message me if you're interested in going that tonight at Resorts World. Thank you to Luke Roper for sponsoring us. If you want to get yourself some Luke Roper gear, then use the code TVV20 and you'll get 20% off everything they have to offer. Go back and watch and listen to the content that I've mentioned already. If you're watching via YouTube and you're not subscribed, please go and do that. Let's have reviews and 5 stars on Apple and Spotify as well. Be back with some more content tomorrow, I hope, so watch out for that. Keep an eye on our social media so you know when the content is coming up. And just have a brilliant rest of your Monday if you can. Don't forget Lionel Richie.